Saturn has recently moved into the sign of Aries, and this is a major energetic shift. We've also recently had Neptune move into the sign of Aries, but that will be a completely separate video. Saturn in Aries is a 2-year long transit, and this is a shift in energy because for the last 2 years, we've had Saturn in the sign of Pisces. Any mutable or Pisces placements will have felt the shift because Saturn is considered a malefic in astrology. Therefore, it can be very difficult. It can bring difficult lessons. It brings discipline, restriction, hardship, isolation. It can also lead into creating things that leave a legacy. Saturn is kind of like the disciplinarian. It is the grandfather type of energy. It is looking 10 steps ahead, trying to see what can we do today to ensure a better tomorrow, a better future, not just for myself, but also for generations to come. And sometimes those types of decisions and being able to see that far ahead requires you to do things right now that aren't super fun. And so Saturn can be seen as not a super fun planet. And being in the sign of Aries, being the first sign of the zodiac, Aries is essentially considered the baby of the zodiac because of that. It's very inexperienced. It has a lot of energy, a lot of momentum, a lot of impulsivity. It wants to do things as quickly as it thinks of them or as the emotions come up. It's like, I want to do this. And it doesn't really think about it logically. It just goes based off of feeling and impulse. And sometimes that can be good because, okay, at least you're moving forward. But sometimes it can lead you into some sticky situations that now you can't turn back from. Now you've kind of you put yourself down a path that limits your possibilities in a way that isn't going to give you the best possibility because you've already taken actions that weren't strategic. Like for example, if you're playing a game of chess and if your first couple of moves that you're doing aren't obviously, you need to strategize. You need to plan ahead. You need to think about what moves your player, your opponent is going to be making in order to strategically plan so that you can eventually win the game. But if you just start making random impulsive moves, but your opponent is actually thinking strategically on what your next move is going to be and how to defend that move and being able to strategically understand where we're going, then you can actually plan and win the game. But you can't win the game if you're just going based off of impulse. So Saturn in Aries, I hope that analogy made sense. I feel like I explained it kind of weird. But Saturn in Aries is essentially bringing the discipline and bringing the order to that impulsivity. It's not saying don't act. It's saying to think before you act. It's allowing, Saturn is giving everyone currently collectively, because this is a collective energy that we're all going to be experiencing. Saturn in Aries is asking us to pause before we impulsively make any type of decisions. Also, if you've been having issues of like not being able to make any type of decisions at all, Saturn in Aries is going to tell you to make a decision because that's another thing. It can sometimes bring a lot of fear in making decisions because you end up in analysis paralysis and you take too long. It's learning how to discipline yourself. Literally, like going back to the chess analogy, people who are professional players, they play timed. Like you need to come up with a decision within, I don't know, like a 1 minute, 2 minute time period. And if you don't come up with a decision by then, well, then you kind of skip your turn. So that's kind of what Saturn in Aries is about. It's like you have to make a decision, but you have to learn how to make your decisions logically and quickly and not impulsively. Because if you impulsively make your decisions, you can possibly lose your advantage on the board and now possibly even lose the game. It's allowing us to cultivate a sense of discernment. It is also allowing us to cultivate courage and resilience, because Aries is also about courage, but it's not just about doing things. It's about being able to act even in the face of fear, even in the face of uncertainty. Yes, understanding that you may be uncertain, you may be fearful, but still going forth and taking action because you've already thought it through. This is what you think the best course of action is going to be, and just going forth based off that. And if you fail, then you fail. At least you did an action. At least you made a move. Because once again, if you're playing chess and you're too scared to move because you're scared that the other person, if you move here, then they're going to eat you. And then if you move there, then they're going to eat your piece there. And it's like, oh my God, I'm too scared. I can't make a decision. Guess what? You're going to end up losing the games. Learning how to make calculated moves in a way that doesn't leave you stuck in analysis paralysis, in a way that moves you forward and eventually, honestly, just cultivates a sense of deep confidence in yourself and deep levels of independence. Because another thing with Aries is with the unhealed, unevolved version of Aries, right? It can sometimes have a sense of confidence or a sense of arrogance. It is like it's fake confidence, it's fake leadership qualities. And so Saturn in Aries is helping you cultivate true leadership. It's helping you cultivate true confidence. And in order to do that, it may put you in certain situations that humbles you, because fake confidence can be easily dismantled. So there may be certain situations that may arise to test your confidence, to see if your confidence is truly something that's innate or something that you built, or is it something that you're just wearing like a mask and can easily be shattered by circumstance. Another thing with Saturn and Aries, Aries once again is a fire sign. It can be extremely passionate and it's ruled by Mars, and Mars is all about anger, aggression, doing things impulsively, like we said. So the dark side of that is acting out of anger or not being able to express your anger properly, having your anger come out in very destructive ways. Saturn in Aries brings discipline to the anger. It allows you or teaches you how to express that anger in ways that are more constructive, in ways that actually move the needle, in a way that you can express what needs aren't being met, in a way that's communicative for other people and can actually create some sort of change without exploding and destroying everything in your path. Saturn moving into the sign of Aries is important for some people more so than others. So obviously you want to look at your chart, see what planets you have in the sign of Aries, see if you have Saturn in the sign of Aries, because if you have Saturn in Aries, that means you're currently going through your Saturn return. And Saturn returns are very important, pivotal moments in your life. If you've been in the astrology sphere for a while, you have heard of Saturn returns, and they can seem kind of scary because everyone kind of goes about saying, like, Saturn returns usually are some of the hardest years of your life, simply because it requires you to grow up. It requires you to release old identities that may have been restricting you or holding you back from reaching your next level of evolution. And the harder you hold on, or the more you cling on to these past identities, relationships, belief systems that haven't been serving you, the harder it's going to be. The more Saturn is going to try and remove them, and the more that you cling on, the more difficult and painful this experience is going to be. However, it also can bring blessings. Saturn does bring blessings to those who are disciplined, to those who are consistent, people who have been doing the work, people who are able to express their boundaries and are able to say no, because Saturn is kind of like the boundary holder. It is about being able to express your no confidently and being able to stand firmly in your truth of, this is what I want and this is not what I want. So if you do have a clear vision of what it is that you do want, what it is that you don't want, you're able to express your boundaries. You have been disciplined, you have been consistent, you have been working diligently towards your goals, and it's actually in alignment with where it is you're meant to go, then Saturn does bring those blessings. However, if you haven't been feeling that, if you've been feeling lost and confused and things are just like not making sense and you don't know what direction to take and everything seems confusing, it's because chances are you're not on the right path, because if you were on the right path, you wouldn't be feeling like that. So Saturn, it then kind of brings the news flash, the flash of awareness. It starts crumbling things around you to show you and give you clarity as to what is working, what isn't working, and what you actually like and what you don't actually like. Sometimes we can get lost in illusions of what we think we want and what we think we don't want. And so Saturn makes it very clear. The slight difference with this transit, though, is that Neptune is also in the sign of Aries, and Neptune is all about confusion, disillusionment. The energy of Neptune is just hazy, foggy, not being able to see things clearly. It's also a very highly spiritual planet. Even though we cannot see things with our physical eyes, we can see things with our third eye. We can see things with our intuition. We start picking up on things that we can't necessarily see in the physical. So I would lean into that intuition. blending those two energies together and making an informed decision based off of your intuition and based off of your logic, being able to sit with the energy, not too long that you're too scared to take action, but sitting with it enough where you don't feel the emotional reactivity, because that's Aries energy is very reactive. It's like you punch someone, they punch you immediately back. That's Aries energy. Meanwhile, Saturn is coming in to be like, we can do something better than a simple punch. And I don't know, it like comes up with a strategy in the moment very quickly that will easily knock that other person out type of deal. You know, it's like winding back so that it can knock the other person out. That's that's Saturn and Aries energy. And being able once again to use your intuition to pick up on what that blend of energy is going to be. Yeah, so let's go through each rising sign to see how Saturn and Aries will be affecting you and in which house it will be affecting you. Now, I do want to give a very general disclaimer that this is going to be a very basic, elementary understanding of what Saturn in Aries will be in each house based off of whole sign houses. Every single chart is different. Every single chart has different planets. So, like, for example, if you are a Libra sun, you don't have any planets in Aries, you think, oh, well, Saturn in Aries doesn't really affect me. Well, Aries is directly opposite of Libra. So, if you have, let's say, Venus in the sign of Libra, and you have Saturn and Neptune currently transiting in the sign of Aries, that's going to be directly in opposition. And so that's going to bring up themes in your relationships, themes of restriction, themes of being more disciplined in your relationships as well. There may be major changes in your relationships. So, depending on the planets that are being aspected by Saturn, depending on where it falls in your chart, can really change these interpretations. If you have multiple planets in the sign of Aries, then Saturn and Neptune are going to be affecting those planets as well. So, like, let's say you have Mercury in the sign of Aries and you have Saturn transiting through Mercury, it's going to make you a little bit more disciplined in the way that you think, when prior you may have just said things without thinking. You may have been very quick to talk, very quick to anger, very quick to just come up with things on the fly, but you're starting to realize that maybe you need to hold back and be a little bit more disciplined. You need to listen a little bit more and maybe just take a moment to pause before you respond, because that actually gives you better results than just immediately responding based off of impulse and reaction. So once again, this all nuanced. It's all very dependent on what kind of planets you have going on. So I'm just going to give a very quick breakdown of what you can expect sign by sign based off of your rising sign and what house it will be falling in your chart. So if you're an Aries rising, that means that Saturn is going to be in your first house. This has to do with your identity. This has to do with your sense of self, your body, the way that you show up in the world. So you can be feeling, since Saturn is restriction, it can be feeling like fear of being judged, fear of being seen. You may start healing these types of things. Saturn is calling for you to heal these things. So it's going to bring more discipline in that as well. So if you've been trying to change your body, you've been trying to change your appearance, and you found that you haven't been having the motivation, the discipline to do it, these next 2 years may actually bring that energy where you're like, okay, I'm actually going to do it this time because I'm sick and tired of feeling this way. So it's going to give you, it's essentially pressure to change. It's pressure to change your physical appearance, to change how you think about yourself and how you express yourself out into the world. Now, if you're a Taurus rising, this is going to be happening in a more subconscious house. This is happening in your 12th house. And 12th house is a little bit difficult to deal with when you have Saturn in there, because Saturn is about isolation when it's in the 12th house. It can feel lonely. It can feel isolating. It can feel like a lot of the issues that you're dealing with Saturn in the 12th are very psychological or very mental. So I would highly suggest, when you have Saturn going through the 12th house, if you don't have a therapist or if you don't have somebody to talk to, try to get one. If you really don't have access, you don't have the funds to do that. Like, I don't know if I should be saying this, but use like AI or something to talk about your feelings and things that you're going through. Like, don't just let it bottle up within you. Don't isolate yourself to that extreme. There may be certain situations or things that come up that do end up isolating you. Like maybe you end up changing your friendship groups, or just like people start leaving your life. Like, things for me personally, when I had my Saturn transit through my 12th and my first house, and literally like everything that was stable in my life was removed. I didn't have any sense of stability anymore. I did feel incredibly isolated at times. Like all I had left was just me. So it gives you a lot of time for self introspection and reflection, which then gears you up for when Saturn does go into your first house, which is going to be a rebirth of your identity. But in order to have that rebirth of your identity, first, you need to go into your subconscious and rewrite those beliefs. And in order to do that properly, you need to be in isolation in a way, like not so much so that it's harmful, but in a way so that you can be in tune with yourself and what it is that you truly want, be in tune with your intuition, and tap into, once again, what you want and what you don't want, and move on from there. Going into Gemini Rising, this is going to be happening in your 11th house of friendships, networks, goals, and dreams. So you could notice that your friendship groups are going to be shifting and changing a lot. If you've had a lot of friendships groups in the past, or like people you notice that are around you are mainly just like people to have fun with, but you can't really trust them. You don't see yourself having like long-term relationships with them. You don't see them being as people who would be by your side no matter what. They're just people that you can call to have a good time. That's not really going to be satisfying you anymore. And or maybe it still does, but it's not gonna be satisfying Saturn anymore, and Saturn's like, "Yo, you need to get some real homies. You need to get some real people on your side who actually care about you, who are actually gonna stick by your side, and who you can grow with. Who are people that you can grow with?" And in order to do that, you need to realize, "Okay, what's my vision? What are my goals? What am I growing towards?" Because if I don't even know what I'm growing towards, how am I supposed to have friends or groups of people around me? How am I supposed to determine who's right for me and who's actually coming with me on these next stages of my life, right? So that's going to be mainly for Gemini Rising. There's going to be a lot of shifts and changes in your friendship groups. Cancer Rising, this is going to be happening in your 10th house. So 10th house is all about career, reputation, your public image, public recognition. So there's going to be a lot of changes in terms of your career. You could actually have, this is more so of a placement of someone who could get recognition in their career. They could get promotions to areas of leadership if you're ready for that. You may be tested for leadership. You could be called to put yourself on a more public stage, put yourself out there, really allow yourself to be seen and allow yourself to be seen as an authority figure. It is going to take some time, consistency, and discipline, but that's going to be a little bit like more of a focus for you in these next 2 years, really building up your reputation as someone who can be seen as an authority figure or a leadership figure. Next, we have Leo Rising. So Leo Rising, this is going to be happening in your 9th house. So this has to do with belief systems, travel, higher learning. So there's going to be belief systems that are going to be challenged. If you have been of a certain faith, then all of a sudden now you may be questioning that. If you haven't had any type of faith, now all of a sudden you may start joining certain church groups, or even just like exploring different types of religions and learning about different belief systems. Could make you feel a little bit lost at times because you're in this weird in between space of like, I had a certain worldview and now that worldview is changing. Or you could start deepening any type of religious higher belief system, higher learning path that you've been on. So if you've been going to school recently and you've really been trying to study and go towards a certain degree or a certain level of mastery, now over these next 2 years, you're going to notice that you're going to be a lot more focused on that and being able to move up professionally, because after these 2 years of Saturn in Aries in your 9th house, Saturn will then move into Taurus, which is your 10th house, which is about your career and public image and opportunities for leadership. So if you are clear on your belief systems and what it is that you're working towards, and essentially what's your vision for the future, if you're able to commit to a certain path of mastery, if you're able to commit to a certain path of belief system, of knowing something, of higher learning, then after these 2 years are over, then you will actually start reaping the rewards of this in your profession life. So next we have Virgo Rising in the 8th house. The 8th house has everything to do with intimacy, shared resources, control. It's also a very deeply psychological house as well, similar to the 12th house. It's more of like the hidden energy house. So there could be power dynamics that show up in your relationships, especially with Saturn there. There could be some areas of control or restriction when it comes to any type of shared resources that you have, or if you have any type of investments going on. You could decide to become a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more consistent with building your assets, things that are going to bring some long-term value, because 8th house is all about assets, investments, things of that sort, having joint investments with partners, things of that nature. So you may be thinking ahead of the future in terms of that, like life insurance policies and stuff of that sort. Being able to set up yourself for the future financially and monetarily. Also, once again, since it's a bit of a psychological house, it can bring up issues with mental health if you aren't being disciplined with your mind, if you're just kind of allowing things to take you emotionally, as we were speaking about earlier, if you're allowing your emotions to guide you as opposed to just like sitting with those emotions, being able to talk to them with someone who you trust and working through them, and then acting from a place of control and emotional regulation, then you'll be fine. But I would say the lesson here is learning how to trust without losing yourself, learning how to trust other people without losing yourself. Because eighth house, once again, it's about your relationships with others and any type of joint partnerships that you have with them and joint resources that you have with them, which requires a lot of trust. If you're a Libra rising, then Saturn and Aries is going to be in your seventh house of relationships, partnerships, and marriage. So the seventh house also has to do with open enemies as well. So a lot of tests in relationships, relationships can end. It can also signal serious commitment. Like you can finally be moving into deeper levels of commitment in your relationships or separation. Because once again, Saturn is either separation or we're in it for the long haul. So you're starting to analyze your relationships more so from a lens of, is this someone that I see myself doing this for the long haul, or was this just a good time and that good time is now over? Because once again, Saturn is not about having fun. Saturn is about what's the best option or what's the best action to take for long-term stability. It's not about what's fun anymore. It's about what's useful, what's beneficial for the next 5, 10, 15 years. So that's going to require you to take a hard look at your relationships and make decisions based off of that. Now, if you're a Scorpio rising, this is happening in your sixth house. That means that this is going to bring up it's going to bring a focal point in your work, your routines, your health. So you're going to become a lot more disciplined in your health, your wellness. There may be something that actually comes up. I remember when Saturn was transiting through my sixth house, I had some health issues come up. And that's when I really started getting interested in, health and wellness and fitness and learning how to heal myself through health and through my habits. So that may be something that comes up. Maybe you have some sort of health issue. It doesn't have to be major. It could be, for me, it was something that was reversible. I had diagnosed hypothyroidism based off of my blood work, and I realized that I could change it with my habits. And so I started changing my habits and I was able to reverse it. So being able to realize that if you are dealing with some sort of health issue, chances are it's because of your habits that you've been dealing with, the things that you've been doing, things that you've been conditioned to do based off of your family and the society that you've been raised in, or things that you've been consuming over your lifetime. And it's led you to this point. So realizing, hey, maybe if I change a couple of things, then I don't have to have this diagnosis anymore. I don't have to deal with these health issues anymore. So it's teaching you how to be more disciplined. Same thing with your work. If your routines aren't structured in a way, you could easily burn out. So making sure that you're very disciplined with your work. It's essentially Saturn in the sixth house. It's about learning how to have time management and learning how to create habits and rituals, daily rituals that benefit you in the long term and that benefit your body in the long term. Sagittarius rising, Saturn in Aries is going to be happening in your fifth house, and fifth house has to do with your creativity. It is dating, it is self-expression. I would say the hardest part with Saturn being in the fifth house is that sometimes, yes, it can bring up creative blocks because you're not so easily flowing as before, because once again, Saturn is very restrictive. And so sometimes it can bring limitations to your creativity. And it also brings restrictions to your dating life, for example, because you're now starting to look for people that are a bit more mature and not people who are just in it for fun. You're not trying to look for things that are fun because Saturn in the fifth house is, once again, not looking for fun and games. It's looking for something a little bit more serious, which can sometimes affect your dating life if you've been used to just being the type of person who just wants to have fun all the time. So it's going to bring those lessons in there. It's going to bring up possible creative blocks that just allow you to be a little bit more structured with your creativity. Maybe before you were a little bit more just kind of doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that and just kind of doing a little bit everywhere, and it wasn't really cohesive in one singular goal, and so you just kind of had a bunch of little projects everywhere. Saturn in the fifth house is going to help you create discipline in your creative projects so that you can actually work towards being successful creatively if that's something that you wanted to do. Now, if you're a Capricorn rising, this is happening in your fourth house. The fourth house has to do with your family, your home, any type of home and family dynamics, your emotional foundation. It's a very emotional house as well, deeply rooted in like any type of family trauma that you may have experienced. So your home life may be tested, your family life may be tested. You may decide that you want to move away from where you currently are because you feel like you need more boundaries. If you're living in a place where there's too many people and there's too many energies and it's just too much going on, Saturn, once again, is very isolating. It kind of likes being by itself, putting its head down and being able to be disciplined. And so if your home environment is too chaotic, Saturn is going to not feel comfortable there. Therefore, you're not going to feel extremely comfortable there and are going to want to leave for somewhere that you feel a little bit more calm and at peace. And that might be just being on your own for a little bit. Doesn't mean you're going to be there, be by yourself and lonely forever, but it's allowing you to cultivate an inner sense of stability in your home and in your home environment and family dynamics. You can also notice maybe more discipline in the home if you still live with other people. There may be a higher sense of discipline from other people that you're living with, and that kind of is now falling on you as well because they're being a little bit more disciplined with you. Ultimately, obviously, everyone use your discernment on what dynamics you feel are healthy, what dynamics you feel like aren't healthy, because there are certain levels of discipline that may be crossing the line and maybe crossing a boundary. So obviously use your discernment there. Not all discipline is beneficial, maybe for some people, but not for everybody. Now, Aquarius rising, if you're in Aquarius rising, Saturn in Aries is going to be in your third house. Third house has to do with your communication, your mindset, your learning, essentially how you express yourself to other people. So this one's very much going to be about making sure you're thinking before you speak, making sure you're planning out any type of books that you're writing, anything that you're using your expression, anything that is involving communication with other people, making sure that you're just taking the time to really think about your responses before you just blurt something out emotionally. So Saturn in the third house is going to really dial that in. It also can bring up communication problems. I mean, that's kind of how it's going to start. It may start as you notice that there's communication problems. Point isn't getting across, maybe because you're too emotional and it's triggering the other person, and you're just saying things and it's easily triggering others. Like, people just get defensive whenever you say stuff, and like, as an Aquarius rising, chances are people are always triggered by you. But with Saturn in your third house, it's giving you the opportunity to learn how to refine the way you communicate so that people don't get as triggered, people don't get as defensive, and they can actually listen to what you have to say, and you can actually get your message across. Because there's no point in talking about something or trying to explain something to somebody if you're coming at it in a way that's going to offend them, it's going to make them defensive, because then they're just going to put a wall up and they're not going to listen or hear anything you have to say. So Saturn in the third house is teaching you how to communicate in a way that other people can actually listen to you. Pisces rising. This is happening in your second house. The second house has to do with your money, your finances, your self-worth, your values. So Saturn in the second house can mean being more disciplined with your money, being more disciplined with your finances. It can also apply some financial pressure. It's allowing you the chance and the space to restructure the way your finances are currently set up, your belief systems about what you feel like you deserve. It can also bring up some restrictions in money, because through the restriction in your finances, by being able to budget, right, and maybe realize, hey, I can't be spending too much money doing this, I can't be spending too much money doing that, because I'm really trying to work towards this goal of, I don't know, saving up for a car, saving up for a house, saving up for something. So I need to make sure that everything's budgeted so that I can eventually save for that. That's more of that energy. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you're going to be broke. Like, there's always a possibility, but like, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It's more so learning how to budget and allocate finances in a way so that you can actually build towards something in the future, right? And yeah, that's everything. That's every single one of the signs. Once again, if you want a personal reading, if you want to see how these energies are going to affect you specifically with your chart and your planetary placements, I do offer readings on my website. You can check the link down below. But if not, it's totally cool. See you guys in the next video. I'm going to have a video coming up next week about Neptune in the sign of Aries, Uranus going into the sign of Gemini, and I post weekly astrology updates every Sunday. So subscribe if you want more info on that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.